I pretended to be a guest at her office party, and what I saw destroyed everything. They say you don't notice the cracks until you're already falling through them. For me, it started with a tablet. Not a confrontation, not a fight, just a casual moment, me sitting on the couch in our living room, trying to dig up an old car maintenance receipt. Jenna and I share the tablet, mostly for groceries, Amazon orders, and boring adult stuff we always swore we'd stay too young to worry about. But that night, the tablet handed me a piece of truth I never asked for. It was late, somewhere around 11 p.m. Jenna was asleep or pretending to be. We'd barely talked that evening. She'd come home late again, citing another hellish shift at the hospital. I believed her. I wanted to, but on the screen in our ride history were 3 receipts, all under her Uber account. One outbound trip, timestamped just after 11:40 p.m. on a Thursday. Destination: Riverside Lofts. I'd never heard of it. Not a clinic, not a hospital, just an apartment complex tucked along the river, somewhere east of I-35. The return trip was almost 2 hours later, back to our house. The third receipt? Dinner. Earlier that same night, 2 entrees, a bottle of Cabernet, tiramisu. That same night, Jenna had told me she was picking up a night shift. Short notice, she said. One of the new interns had flaked, and she didn't want to leave the team hanging. I even remember texting her around 10:30, asking if she wanted me to leave the porch light on. She replied with a heart emoji and said, "It'll be a late one." When I looked at that receipt again, Rivermark Hotel, downtown Austin, my stomach turned. That wasn't a hospital cafeteria. It wasn't even close to the medical district. It was upscale, elegant, the kind of place we'd gone to for our anniversary 2 years ago. The last time we really got dressed up for anything. At first, I wanted to believe I was wrong. That maybe she'd grabbed dinner with a colleague. That maybe the trip to Riverside Lofts was for a patient or a friend in trouble. But none of that explained the card I found 3 days later. I was looking for my earbuds in her gym bag. We both keep ours mixed up, and tucked between a pair of clean socks and her deodorant stick was a plastic access card. Dark navy, gold trim, and there it was, Rivermark Executive Access stamped along the top. I turned it over. There was no name on it, but it wasn't a key card you grab from a front desk for dinner. It looked like a multi-day access pass, the kind corporate guests use when they're there more than one night. It had a magnetic strip. It hummed like it belonged somewhere it shouldn't. My heart dropped, but I still didn't say anything. Instead, I slipped the card back where I found it, sat in the kitchen, thought too long about nothing. When Jenna came home that evening, smiling, talking fast, hair still damp from a shower I never saw her take, I asked how work went. She kissed me on the cheek, told me her feet were *ling her, said the ER had been backed up all night and she'd barely had time to breathe. She gave me one of those half hugs, the kind you give someone out of obligation, not int Macy, and she went upstairs to change into her pajamas. I sat at the table and stared at the untouched glass of wine I'd poured her. A few years ago, she would have grabbed that glass before anything else, kicked off her shoes, propped her feet in my lap while we binged whatever new series we were into. She used to vent about rude patients or difficult shifts. Sometimes she'd cry if someone didn't make it. Now, her stories were surface level, too clean, like she was following a script that didn't belong to her. Later that night, I brought up the Uber receipts, casually. I didn't mention the locations, just asked if she'd used the tablet recently. She shrugged. Maybe? I think I ordered a ride last week. Work was a mess. I can't remember. I nodded and let it go. I didn't push. But that answer stuck with me like a splinter under the skin. Because Jenna remembers everything. She's not the type to maybe about anything. And even if she had forgotten, the lie was too neat, too practiced, like she'd already decided what not to say before I asked. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay next to her and watched the ceiling fan spin slow circles above us. She was turned away from me, curled on her side, one arm tucked under the pillow like she was hiding from something, or someone. I listened to her breathing and wondered if she was dreaming about me. Or him, because by then, I already had a name in my head. Cole. He'd come up a few times. Just offhand mentions, Cole handled that part of the project, or Cole offered to drive since the meeting ran late. I never thought much of it at first. She had a million co-workers. But lately, Cole had become a character in almost every story. And now I was starting to question if those stories were all fiction. The next morning, I checked again. The tablet history, the ride receipts, the dinner charge, all still there, unchanged. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't some billing error or accidental charge. And the timestamps? They aligned perfectly with the nights she'd said she was working late. I didn't confront her. Not then. Instead, I started taking mental notes. I paid attention, watched her more carefully, studied the way she spoke, how she moved, what she didn't say, and I kept circling back to one thing. If she wasn't cheating, why did it already feel like she was gone? Once you notice the first crack, you start seeing all of them. At first, it was just those rides and that dinner receipt. But once my brain latched onto the possibility, no, the probability, that something was wrong, everything else started unraveling. Things I had shrugged off for months started replaying in my head like a highlight reel I didn't want to watch. The first thing that stood out was her phone. Jenna used to leave it everywhere. On the kitchen counter while she cooked. On the nightstand while we watched Netflix in bed. Sometimes she'd even forget it in the car. But lately, it was glued to her. Always face down. Always on silent. Sometimes, I'd catch her flipping it over when I walked into the room, locking the screen like she was swiping away a secret. One night, I asked about it. I tried to keep it light. Hey, when did you start locking your phone again? She didn't miss a beat. Oh, it's policy now, she said. HIPAA stuff. Can't leave screens unlocked at work. I just got used to it. Made sense on the surface. But Jenna didn't bring her phone into patient rooms. She didn't use it for charts or admin. She wasn't an intern anymore. She worked in planning and intake now. Desk work. Still, I let it go. I let everything go. Until the second SIM card showed up. I only noticed because her phone rang while she was in the shower. It was buzzing on the bathroom counter. Muted, as always. But this time the screen flashed. Switch SIM to access call. That stopped me in my tracks. She had a dual SIM phone, sure. Lots of people do. But Jenna had never used the second slot. We even joked about it when she got the phone. Unless you're leading a secret double life? I teased. Guess the joke was on me. Later, I asked her, half joking again, if she'd activated the second SIM. Work gave me one, she said. For emergencies. They're trying to separate personal and work comms. Again, sounded reasonable. Almost too reasonable. It was like she had prepped answers for questions I hadn't even thought to ask yet. She was always just ahead of the truth. I started paying more attention to her gym routine next. She'd always been into fitness, even more than me. But something had shifted. She used to work out in the mornings, 6 a.m. Spin class, sweaty hug goodbye, protein shake on the way out the door. It was her rhythm. Then suddenly, she was going at night. I think it's just easier to wind down after work this way, she'd said, tossing on her leggings while I was making dinner. And it's quieter in the evenings. That part was true. The gym was quieter, because no one was there. After a few weeks, I got curious. I dropped her off one evening, told her my car needed gas and I didn't want to make her wait, and then doubled back 15 minutes later. Her car wasn't in the lot. Not only that, but the desk clerk said she hadn't scanned in. Not that night. Not all week. I sat in my car for 10 minutes trying to feel something. Anger, betrayal, even shock. But all I felt was confirmation. The gym wasn't real. It was just the latest cover story. I noticed her shoes next. Not her running shoes, her other shoes. New ones kept showing up. High-end brands. Fashion-forward, not practical. She told me she found them on discount. Said her coworker was helping her get better deals online. Cole's sister used to work retail, she explained once. He knows where to look. Cole again. Every story circled back to him. Cole had become a fixture in our house, even though I'd never met the guy. He was the name behind every laugh she brought home, every work anecdote, every unexpected scheduling change. It was always, Cole said this, Or Cole was late so I covered for him. Or Cole got transferred to the North office so we're doing virtual now. That one hit me harder than I expected. Because the following week, Jenna had a training event in North Austin. Overnight, when I asked if she wanted me to drive her, she said no. We're all carpooling. I waited until she left. Then I looked up Cole on LinkedIn. I had never felt like that guy before, but I did it. I scrolled through his page until I saw the update. Excited to join the North Austin office full-time. His start date? The same day as her training. I closed the laptop and just stared at the blank screen. I remember thinking, so this is it. This is the point where the excuses stop being coincidences. I started tracking smaller things too. Her shampoo changed. Subtle but different. Her hair always smelled like mint and coconut before. Now it was some floral blend I'd never seen in our bathroom. Her receipts showed new products, some from brands I didn't recognize. She started showering at weird hours. Late at night, sometimes after midnight, after she'd come back from running errands or helping a friend. I once asked who the friend was, and she just mumbled something about a girl from her shift team and ducked into the bathroom. And the int asterisk Macy? That was gone. Slowly at first, then all at once. We used to have this rhythm. Sunday mornings, Friday nights, long hugs in the kitchen for no reason. At some point, that rhythm died. Hugs became taps on the shoulder. Kisses turned into quick pecks. Lips closed, eyes open. Our bodies still shared a bed, but our hearts were in different rooms. We stopped watching shows together. Stopped going out for spontaneous dinners. Even weekend plans faded. She always had a reason. Always had something come up. One weekend, she said she needed to work overtime because the hospital was short-staffed. I believed her, mostly because I didn't want to go anywhere either. I stayed in, worked on a project, didn't bother her. Later that afternoon, I checked her location on Find My iPhone. Not to snoop, just out of habit. She was at Zilker Park. For 2 hours. When I asked about it that night, she paused just long enough before answering. Said she was just clearing her head between shifts. Said she went to walk alone. It helps me process, she added. Like I should feel honored she was being so transparent. But I couldn't ignore the detail. She'd never walked in Zilker alone before. That had always been our place. The first time we picnicked there, she got sunburned and I offered her my flannel. She wore it for the rest of the summer. Now she was going back there, without me, without explanation, and pretending it was nothing. Every little behavior started to carry weight. The missed calls. The texts she answered too quickly or too slowly. The way she jumped when I touched her shoulder while she was scrolling. And through it all, I kept telling myself, maybe it's just a rough patch. Maybe she's overwhelmed. Maybe I'm overthinking. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I wasn't watching a marriage drift apart. I was watching someone quietly disconnect the wires and sneak out the back door. By the time her company's annual gala rolled around, I wasn't hoping for answers anymore. I was hoping for clarity. There's a difference. Answers imply you still expect the truth. Clarity is when you already know it, and you just need to see it out loud. Jenna had mentioned the event weeks prior, casually, like she was describing a meeting or a dentist appointment. It's just a corporate thing, nothing fancy, she'd said, barely looking up from her phone. Dinner, awards, awkward speeches. You'd hate it. She didn't invite me. That alone said plenty. We used to go to those kinds of things together. Boring or not, I went because she asked. Because it mattered to her. And she used to hold my hand during the awkward speeches. She used to lean in during the slow songs and whisper dumb jokes in my ear. Not anymore. What Jenna didn't know, what she couldn't have guessed, is that one of my close friends, Will, worked for a partnering firm. We'd met back in college and stayed in touch over the years. When I mentioned offhandedly that Jenna's company was hosting their end-of-year event at the W downtown, he perked up. I'll be there, he said. Why? You going? I shrugged. She didn't invite me. That was enough for him. Will made a quick call, and just like that, I was added to the guest list as his +1. No fanfare. No confrontation. I wasn't going to make a scene. I just needed to see it for myself. The night of the event, I wore a charcoal gray blazer I hadn't put on in over a year. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Clean-shaven, collared, trying too hard not to look like I was trying. I drove alone, parked a block away, and walked into that hotel ballroom like a stranger entering someone else's story. The place was beautiful in that sterile corporate kind of way. LED lights, generic jazz, open bar. Men in suits talking too loud. Women in expensive heels pretending not to watch each other. I scanned the room once, then again, and there she was. Jenna stood near the back, dressed in a black off-shoulder gown I'd never seen before. She was laughing, smiling, eyes bright, posture loose, so different from the version of her I'd been living with at home. This woman was alive, animated, and standing beside her, holding a drink and leaning just a little too close, was Cole. I'd seen photos of him online, but they didn't do justice to the way he carried himself. He was confident, tall, polished. The kind of man who didn't second-guess his words. I could already tell he knew how to fill a room. They weren't touching. Not yet. But their proximity told me more than I needed. It was the comfort. The int*Macy of two people who didn't need to perform for anyone else. People who had long since crossed the boundary of coworkers. I stayed in the background. Will was off mingling, so I hovered by the bar, blending in, sipping club soda I barely tasted. Then I saw it happen. They started walking toward the back of the ballroom, near the service corridor. Jenna glanced around before slipping through a small door marked, "Staff Only." Cole followed 2 steps behind. I waited 10 seconds, maybe 12, then moved. I didn't go after them. I just walked slowly toward the same direction, paused near a tall potted plant, and waited. They were gone for 27 minutes. 27 minutes behind a door labeled for staff and storage. No one else went in or out during that time. I kept count. When they returned, Jenna was smoothing her hair. Cole adjusted his collar. He said something that made her laugh, too loudly, and then she touched his arm. Not a flirtatious brush, not a joking shove, a familiar gesture, thumb on his forearm, just like she used to do to me when we were leaving restaurants, when we were still us. That was the moment I stopped wondering. They stood together in the corner again, talking with another couple now, as if nothing had happened. As if they hadn't just disappeared together in a restricted hallway for almost half an hour. As if the past year of deception hadn't just played itself out in real time. My stomach churned, but I felt oddly calm. There it was. The proof. I didn't need photos. I didn't need audio recordings. I didn't even need a confession. The truth was in her body language. In the way she looked at him when he spoke. In the little smile she gave him when he poured her a second glass of champagne. She had never smiled like that at me anymore. Will found me a few minutes later, handed me a fresh drink, and asked if I wanted to sit down. I told him I had to leave. He didn't press. Outside, the air was cold, crisp. It bit at my throat as I walked to my car, alone, no longer pretending not to know. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in the driver's seat, both hands on the wheel, waiting for my heartbeat to slow down. Because now I knew for sure. Not from rumor. Not from suspicion, but from watching it unfold in front of me. That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove around Austin, down South Congress, up through Hyde Park, past the empty sidewalks where Jenna and I used to walk on weekends, holding coffee in one hand and each other in the other. I didn't feel betrayed. Not yet. I just felt hollow, like the person I loved had become a stranger in plain sight, and everyone else had seen it before I did. I got home around 1 a.m. The lights were off. Jenna was already asleep, or pretending to be. I didn't check. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the refrigerator, trying to figure out how long she'd been gone. Not physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and how long I'd been waiting for a version of her that no longer existed. When I finally climbed into bed, I kept my back to her. She stirred, mumbled something incoherent, then rolled to the far edge. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to ask. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. Didn't mention the gala, the hallway, the champagne, or Cole's hand on her lower back. I didn't need her explanations anymore. I'd seen all I needed. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Made coffee. Asked if I wanted eggs. Hummed to herself while flipping through her emails at the kitchen table. I watched her from the living room, wondering how many lies a person had to tell themselves before they could look this normal. She asked how I slept. I said fine. She kissed me on the forehead before leaving for work. I stood there, still holding my mug, as the door closed behind her. I felt like a ghost in my own life. That evening, when she came home, I told her I was heading to bed early. Said I wasn't feeling great. She didn't press. She didn't even look up from her phone. Upstairs, I opened our smart intercom system and pulled the archive footage from the week prior. We'd installed the doorbell cam 3 years ago after someone siphoned gas from our driveway. Jenna had rolled her eyes back then. What are we, suburban FBI? I clicked through timestamps. Most of the entries were routine. Mail deliveries. Food drop-offs. Me leaving for work. Her walking the dog. And then I found it. Thursday evening, just before 9 p.m. Jenna entered through the underground parking garage entrance. Not the front door. She wasn't alone. The timestamp read 8:53 p.m. Cole followed her in, holding a duffel bag. They didn't speak on camera. Just walked in side by side. She had a hand on his back, guiding him through like he belonged there. She didn't glance toward the camera. She knew where it was. Knew the angle. Knew it wouldn't catch what happened in the hallway upstairs. That was the same night she told me she had a late spin class. She came home at 10:30, hair damp, saying she'd showered at the gym. I sat there, alone in the dark, rewatching that 30-second clip like it might offer some deeper meaning if I stared long enough. But it didn't. It just gave me what I already had. Truth, delivered in cold, high definition. I downloaded the footage, created a backup, stored it in a secure cloud folder under an unrecognizable name. Then I backed up the Uber receipts, the hotel card photo, the dinner charges. I took *TS of our location history from that night. I compiled it all into a zip file and labeled it @JMiller_evidence. Not because I planned to use it. Not yet. But because I needed to stop doubting myself. Because gaslighting doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's the gentle way someone says, "You're imagining things," or "You worry too much." It's the sweet voice paired with the subtle vanishing of facts. There's a person standing in front of you, rewriting reality, one smile at a time. And I'd believed her. For months. The shame of that burned more than the betrayal itself. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed listening to her breathe, wondering how many nights she'd spent curled beside me with someone else's scent still on her skin. I kept asking myself when exactly I'd stopped being her home. The next day, I went into work like nothing had happened. I answered emails, took client calls, ate lunch alone at my desk. My coworkers joked around in the break room like it was any other Thursday. No one knew that my world was splitting apart by the hour. That night, I ordered takeout and told Jenna I was going to work late from the study. She nodded, distracted, said she might do some yoga before bed. I shut the study door, turned off the lights, and sat in silence, just breathing. I knew what had to come next. This wasn't a talk-it-out situation. Not anymore. I had passed the threshold where conversations mattered. This was the point where facts met action, where emotion gave way to strategy. I needed to be smart, precise, legal, so I emailed a family lawyer I'd researched earlier that day. Her bio mentioned a specialty in quiet separations, high asset division, and discretion. She replied within the hour. We booked an initial consult for Monday afternoon. In the meantime, I started untangling our life. I changed the passwords on all my personal accounts, transferred my direct deposit to a separate bank, opened a new savings account under my name. I didn't drain anything, just created breathing room. I compiled a list of our shared assets: home, cars, retirement accounts, insurance policies, joint credit cards. Everything that once represented unity now felt like a chessboard I needed to reset. When Jenna fell asleep that night, I took photos of important documents. marriage license, tax returns, her employment contract, anything that might become a question later. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it to survive. By Sunday, I had a spreadsheet with 3 tabs: emotional prep, financial independence, and exit timeline. I know that sounds cold, clinical even, but the truth is, when your marriage dies quietly, without slammed doors or screaming matches, you have to build your own closure from scratch. You have to move like a shadow in your own house, gathering what's left before the final storm hits. Then Monday came. I sat across from the lawyer in a downtown office that smelled like wood polish and old carpet. She was kind, direct, and didn't flinch when I slid the folder across her desk. She skimmed through the evidence silently. When she finished, she looked up. "Do you want to confront her before we file?" "No," I said. "I don't need her reaction. I already lived it." She nodded, closed the folder, and outlined next steps. Divorce in Texas didn't require a reason, but infidelity could still influence division, especially in discretionary rulings. "I don't want revenge," I told her. "Just a clean split, quiet, no drama." "You're not the first person to say that," she replied, "but few stick to it." "I will," because I knew how this story ended. I just wanted to reach the last page without burning the whole book down. That night, I came home with a new calm in my chest. Jenna greeted me in yoga pants, hair pulled back, face freshly washed. "Hey," she said, peeking up from her laptop. "You okay?" I smiled gently. "Yeah, just tired." She nodded, turning her attention back to the screen. Probably texting him. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and looked at the manila envelopes sitting in my bag. Inside were draft papers, still unsigned. But soon, very soon, 3 days after I met with the lawyer, Jenna suggested we take a trip together. I was standing in the kitchen, halfway through making coffee, when she floated the idea out loud. No lead-up, no build, just a casual "we should go somewhere. Get out of the city. Just the 2 of us." I turned slowly. "Like a vacation?" She nodded, pulling her hair into a ponytail. "Something low-key. A weekend in the mountains, maybe?" I found this little cabin near Asheville Blue Ridge area. Super quiet. Great hiking trails. I just stared at her. Jenna hated hiking, but I smiled. "Sure. Sounds nice." She blinked, almost surprised by how easily I agreed. Then she smiled too. One of those soft, nostalgic ones she hadn't used in a long time. For a second, I wondered if she believed herself. If she actually thought this trip would fix something. Or if she knew, like I did, that it was already over. We booked the place that night. A cabin with a wraparound porch, fireplace, and forest views. She forwarded me the confirmation, added it to the shared calendar, and titled it Reset Weekend. Cute. We left early Friday morning. 6 hours of driving, most of it in silence. I offered to drive the first leg. She took the passenger seat, answering emails and flipping between Spotify playlists. She played songs we used to love, like it might summon some kind of feeling between us. Didn't. She wore a flannel I didn't recognize and boots that looked brand new. Midway through Mississippi, she asked if I wanted to stop and grab lunch. I said no, let's just keep going. Somewhere outside Birmingham, she fell asleep. I kept my eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel, wondering if this would be the last trip we ever took together. I didn't feel sad about it. I felt still, like I'd already mourned it all. We arrived at the cabin just before dusk. It was beautiful, tucked into the woods with soft pine needles blanketing the gravel driveway. A slanted roof, heavy wooden door, a stone chimney still warm from the sun. There was a faint smell of cedar inside, like the walls remembered everyone who'd ever tried to heal inside them. Jenna walked through the cabin slowly, taking it all in like she wanted to be impressed. "It's even better than the pictures," she said, setting her bag down on the kitchen counter. "Feels peaceful, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, quiet." She opened a bottle of wine. No glasses, just a casual sip straight from the bottle, the way she used to when we were younger and careless. She passed it to me, smiling like we were co-conspirators. I took a sip. tasted expensive, sharp and heavy. That night, we sat on the porch under a blanket. The stars were brighter than anything we ever saw in Austin. You could hear everything. The wind in the trees, the creak of the deck, her phone vibrating quietly against the armrest. She didn't check it. Not that time. Instead, she leaned against me, light, hesitant. I didn't move away, but I didn't lean back either. Feels like we've been distant, she said eventually, staring out at the trees. I let the silence stretch. Yeah, she swallowed. I think I've been under a lot of pressure. With work. And just life. I haven't been showing up the way I want to. I know that. I nodded again. You've seemed tired. Not just tired, she said quietly. Disconnected. I didn't mean for it to happen. I almost asked, didn't mean for what to happen? But I stayed quiet. This was her chance to say it. To own it. But she didn't. Instead, she reached for my hand under the blanket. Held it like it was something fragile she'd just rediscovered. We sat like that for a while, just breathing. The next morning, she woke up early. I found her on the porch with her laptop, tapping away at emails. She said she had to check in just briefly, said it wouldn't take long. She stayed glued to that screen for 2 hours. I made breakfast, ate alone, washed the dishes. We were surrounded by trails, but she didn't want to hike. My ankle's still a little sore from the gym, she said, stretching without much effort. You go. I'll journal or something. I didn't go. Instead, I sat in the rocking chair outside, watching fog roll off the hills. I stared at the trees and tried to remember what it used to feel like to be alone with her and actually feel together. By mid-afternoon, she was back on her phone, messaging someone. I could see the way her fingers moved, slow, then fast, then pause, like she was choosing words carefully. She angled the screen away from me when I came in to grab a water bottle. Old habits. Later that evening, we lit a fire. She scrolled while it burned, barely looking up as the logs cracked and hissed. I watched the flames, letting them hypnotize me, thinking about all the little ways she was saying goodbye without using the word. That night, she climbed into bed and curled up facing the wall. I watched her back rise and fall for a long time. In the dark, I whispered, "Are you happy?" She didn't answer, not even a twitch. I wasn't sure if she was asleep or just pretending not to hear me. The next morning, we packed in silence. The drive back was even quieter than the one before. Somewhere near Shreveport, she put her hand on my leg, just for a second, then pulled it back. I didn't react. When we got home, she unpacked her things quickly, methodically, like she was removing evidence. I watched her fold clothes into drawers she barely used anymore. Afterward, she said she was going to take a nap. That drive wiped me out. I nodded. Go ahead. She disappeared upstairs. I stood in the kitchen, hand resting on the manila folder I'd hidden behind the cereal boxes. The trip hadn't been a reconnection. It had been a test. A quiet one. Final. Definitive. She thought she was buying time. But I already knew this was a farewell tour dressed up like a weekend retreat. A soft ending to a marriage that had already flatlined. Back in Austin, I met with my lawyer, filed the petition, and closed all shared accounts. I archived the footage, receipts, and messages. Quietly, methodically, I moved funds and arranged a separate apartment. The folder with divorce papers sat on the kitchen table one evening. Time-stamped, signed, final. Jenna never asked about it. She only stared for a moment before walking past. No fight, no denial, just silence. The exit had already begged *N. Jenna gave an interview at her firm's award ceremony. She laughed about reliable sponsor spouses and said she'd found emotions elsewhere. It hit social media in hours. Friends sent me clips. Her betrayal wasn't private anymore, it was a headline. The next morning, I filed the final documents, left the apartment, and dropped the keys on the counter. No note, no drama, just facts, closure, and space to start over. Freedom didn't feel loud, felt clean.